my colleague Victoria Hay, we are very excited to welcome you to the launch of our German resources for the new Modern Languages K-10 syllabus. This session will also be recorded and uploaded to our Languages New South Wales YouTube channel should you wish to refer to any information shared in the meeting to share with your colleagues. First, I would like to begin today by recognising the ongoing custodians of the lands and waterways where we work and live. We pay respect to elders, past and present, as ongoing teachers of knowledge, songlines, and stories. We strive to ensure every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learner in New South Wales achieves their potential through education. Today, I am presenting from Awabakal land in Lake Macquarie, and Victoria is presenting from the lands of the Wallumarigul clan in Ryde. Please feel very welcome to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know which land you are meeting with us from today. Today, we will explore our German resource set, including a deep dive into our Stage 4 unit of work called What Do You Like to Eat? Was isst du gern? First, we will explore what is included in the resource set and where you can find it on our website. In our resource set for German, we have included a scope and sequence for Stage 4, teacher version and student version, a scope and sequence for Stage 5, teacher version and student version. Although this resource set is specifically designed for Stage 4 German, we think it is important you see how we have mapped out students' learning across Stage 4 and 5 and where the unit of work sits within it. A unit of work with 46 accompanying resources, a student-friendly unit of work infographic, an assessment task with marking guidelines and a sample response. The images on the screen are only glimpses of the resources, as it would be impossible to fit a snapshot of everything included in the set on the screen. It is important to note that these are sample resources and not a directive of what to teach. We have provided each of these elements so you can see how the new syllabus can be applied to Stage 4 German and to support you in your planning and teaching. When you visit our webpage, the address is shown on the screen. Which Victoria will now post in the chat. And alternatively, we will also have the QR code, which will take you there, which you can see on the screen. You will see there are a number of choices on the landing page. Click on the Planning, Programming and Assessing Languages 7 to 10 page, and then click on the German tab, which will bring you to our German support. Scroll down the web page until you see the Modern Languages K-10 Syllabus Support for German 2022 heading. Underneath this is where you will find our support for German for the new syllabus. Hopefully you can see in the image under Stage 4 the scope and sequence materials, and the sample unit of work can be found there too. If you were to scroll down further underneath the sample of unit of work, you would then find the materials to support your use of the unit of work. The Stage 5 scope and sequence can be found further down the page. When you access our units of work, you will notice it is a very long document. We want to acknowledge this and explain why. Our units of work are standalone resources. They include everything you need to teach the unit, everything from teaching and learning activities and student resources to mini tasks and formal summative assessment tasks. When you download and open the unit of work document, you will see that all of our resources are hyperlinked within the unit of work. The types of resources you will find hyperlinked may be PowerPoints, worksheets, PDF files, listening files, and more. Any resource that we suggest is used within our unit of work will be hyperlinked for you to easily access. What is even better is that these resources are all kept in a central place, listed in the order of their use on our website. Each of our resources have either teacher or student facing in brackets next to the name of the file to help you identify whether the resource and the instructions on them are designed for the teacher or designed for the student. This is something new we have adopted in our support for this unit of work in response to teacher feedback. A little later in this presentation, we will show you what some of these resources look like. And there is more. Each unit also includes a visual learning map infographic. If given to students or displayed in the classroom, the visual learning map provides students with an opportunity to see where their learning is heading. The visual learning map includes sequences of learning, mini tasks, and the summative assessment task. The infographic was created using Canva. The link to the editable version is going into the chat right now. And when you go to the link, please choose the option Use Template for a new design rather than Edit Template. Let's take a look at our Stage 4 and 5 German scope and sequences. In planning our Stage 4 unit of work, we mapped out a sample scope and sequence for both Stage 4 and Stage 5 to ensure the flow of learning was considered. Our scope and sequences include title and duration. You can see on the title page, it's 100 hours for the Stage 4 and 200 hours for Stage 5. A learning overview, which is a description of what students will learn term by term. Syllabus outcomes, skills, in other words, what skills students will develop in German, and assessment tasks. It is important to note that our department scope and sequence documents contain more information than what's required by NESA. We believe the additional information better supports both you and your students, which is ultimately our goal in creating them. Like all our resources, please modify them to suit your context. We have chosen to include the skills that students develop, so the intention of the outcomes and the content is clear. We have also included the suggested assessment task, and NESA's requirements are embedded in our documents too. Let's take a more detailed look into the scope and sequence now. Term and duration. Our sample units have been designed as 10-week units, so they are a full term of learning. You may adjust these to suit your context and to align with assessment periods at your school. To support reporting, which may or may not fall at the end of the term, the units include a range of assessment ideas in the form of mini tasks. The learning overview provides the unit title and a description of what the students will learn. Outcomes. The 3 syllabus outcomes are covered in every unit. However, please note that not every content dot point is addressed in every unit. The content dot points all need to be addressed over the course of a stage and are considered essential learning in order for students to meet the outcomes. Next, we have skills. We have included the communication and language skills for each unit as a guide to student learning during the unit. Having them here helps cross-check them quickly with other units across the stages to ensure you see a growth in skills within each stage and across the stages. Language should be constantly recycled and built upon. And assessment. We have designed an assessment task for each unit of work, ensuring all outcomes are assessed across the stage. We have also demonstrated interrelated tasks that assess more than one outcome. These are samples and not directives. Remember, assessment requirements are school-based decisions, so you may assess individual or multiple outcomes depending on your context. Remember, these documents are not prescriptive. You can absolutely design your scope and sequence differently. We provide extra information to support teachers. Your way is okay too. These are the topics we have included in our scope and sequence for Stage 4. The highlighted topic is the unit of work we have fully developed in this set of German resources. And these are the topics we have included in our scope and sequence for Stage 5. In determining the topics covered, we not only backward mapped from Stage 6 continuous topics, but we also ensured topics built on each other from term to term. This enables the development of skills using the spiral approach for reinforcement of language structures and to build complexity. We have even created student-facing infographics of the scope and sequences. As with a unit of work infographic, they can be displayed in your classroom or given to students so they know the language learning journey they will embark on. You can even include them in the school newsletters and subject selection books. These visuals are engaging for students and can build excitement towards their language learning. You can adapt our versions or you can create your own. You'll see the editable versions in the chat now. As I said before, when you go to the links, please choose the option Use Template for a new design rather than Edit Template. Now we will move on to unpacking our Stage 4 unit of work. With all units of work we have published so far, our units of work provide teaching, learning and assessment activities, as well as guiding you through the pedagogy. The intent of curriculum reform is to strengthen and streamline what is taught in schools. It presents an opportunity to re-energize what we teach and how we teach it. In our context, this means emphasizing depth rather than breadth, focusing on practicing, reinforcing, and building on language structures that facilitate communication rather than focusing on large amounts of vocabulary. This allows for deep learning. The units of work still have a unit description, including timing and what communication and language skills will be covered. And student prior learning is also addressed, so you know our intended expectations of skills students need prior to doing the units of work. This also means you know what to pre-teach if you want to pick up and teach one of the units. You do not need to use all of a unit or even any of it. You can use parts of it, take activities from it, and use them in your own context or even with the units of other languages. Timeframes, formative and summative assessment tasks, teaching and learning activities, and reflection and feedback opportunities should be adjusted to suit your context, including the specific strengths and needs of students. We have used these units as more than a teaching program. We have unpacked pedagogy throughout and have included all of the resources. Be sure to check out all of the hyperlinks. Before we start a deep dive into the Stage 4 German unit of work, a reminder of the student-friendly infographic so you can see the content and progression of the learning at a glance. The Stage 4 unit of work we have developed is What do you like to eat? Was isst du gern? We will point out some of the features of the unit to support you with planning, quality pedagogy, and syllabus content. Let's start with a summative assessment task, which is the core of the unit. By providing this at the start, you have a clear understanding of what students are expected to understand, know, and do by the end of the unit. In both Stage 4 and Stage 5, we have included interrelated tasks. In this task, students are responding to questions from their host sibling about food and drink preferences. The task addresses the interacting outcome. While the task description is outlined at the start of the unit, Appendix A is where you will find the sample summative assessment task with the task description written in student-friendly language to set students up for success. Outcomes and outcome dot points, marking guidelines linked to outcome content points, A to E criteria, also student-friendly to support consistent teacher judgment. Expectations are clear for all students and teachers, and a sample student response. We recommend using this as a means to plan your assessment task. Break it down into mini tasks and teaching and learning activities to ensure you are explicitly teaching the vocabulary and language features identified in the task. The teaching, learning, and assessment activities have been chunked into lesson sequences, each with their own underpinning learning intentions and success criteria, as well as the vocabulary and grammatical structures. Sequenced learning reflects explicit teaching, whereby students can access prior knowledge to reduce cognitive load, and paced instruction with modelling and examples to help ease burden on working memory. Lesson sequences may be anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. In the Stage 4 German unit of work, the first chunk is 3 weeks. Next, we have explicit teaching and learning activities, with each one aligned to syllabus content dot points. You can see these in bold after each activity. In our context, the outcomes in the syllabus are very broad. The true richness of the syllabus lies in the content dot points. Each time we have chosen the dot point or dot points which align most strongly to the activity, but there may be others. By aligning these dot points to activities, we're showcasing what the syllabus looks like in the classroom. It also helps you to see the breadth of content covered in each unit. We recommend including and tracking them within and across your units to ensure you cover all of them across the scope of a year. This is because all syllabus content points are considered essential learning. Please note that there are times when an activity does not align with a content dot point, and that's fine. For example, at the start of the unit, we have an activity where teachers introduce the topic of food and ask students to suggest relevant vocabulary and language structures which relate to describing their food habits, what their favourite food is, what they like to eat or drink, and what they eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This activity does not address any specific content dot points, so we haven't included any. Mini task progress checkpoints are included. These are formative assessment opportunities backward mapped from the end of unit summative task. These support students to identify where they are on their learning journey in relation to meeting the requirements of the summative task. This mini task requires students to listen to a text where 3 German exchange students introduce themselves. They then match the exchange students to a lunch deal suitable for them. This is building students' skills to be able to complete the end of unit task where they will be required to provide information about their own food likes and dislikes. After each mini task progress checkpoint, we have included opportunities for feedback and student self-reflection to support students to gain ownership of their own learning, build a deeper understanding of how the language can be applied to the summative task, as well as identify which skills they need to strengthen and where to go for help. Each unit includes differentiation strategies for students requiring additional support, high potential and gifted students, and students with advanced proficiency. Sometimes we have aligned the strategies with a particular activity and sometimes with a mini task. The strategies are neither exhaustive nor definitive. They are just examples of how we can differentiate to meet the needs of a range of students. This example is how we provided differentiation for the mini task we showed you for the first chunk of learning, which required students to listen to a text where 3 German exchange students introduced themselves. They then had to match the exchange students to a lunch deal suitable for them. Please take a moment to read the examples on the screen. Thank you. And I will now hand over to my colleague Victoria to continue.
Thank you, Chanel. In our unit of work, we've suggested the use of an anchor chart. An anchor chart is a visual summary of learning. It allows students to organise content and assist them with learning and memorisation, as it can be easily and often referred to, both in class and when revising at home. Throughout each learning sequence, when new vocabulary, expressions and language structures are presented, we suggest the students add them to the anchor chart. In this unit, we've suggested a digital anchor chart using Padlet. There are many other digital tools that can be used, or they can be handwritten. Rather than having individual anchor charts, the teacher may choose to have a collaborative one for the whole class. One of the first activities of the unit is for the teacher to ask students whether they've eaten German food or whether they've been to a German restaurant. Students share names of any foods they know in German or the names of any German restaurants they have been to. Using a mind map, the teacher writes what students have shared. Mind maps are a great way to start a unit as they consolidate vocabulary and concepts for a topic. You will note this activity is not aligned to an outcome dot point, as it is setting the stage for the learning to come. You'll see the unit of work includes introducing drilling vocabulary of foods and drinks and language structures using these words. PowerPoints with images and sets of cards for students using the same images are used for these activities. We consider the visual prompts, especially for German foods and drinks the students won't be familiar with, to be very useful in their remembering the vocabulary. Visual prompts such as these focus the attention of students and enable teaching of vocabulary with less reliance on English. Here, you can see the content dot point from the syllabus aligned to this activity. As we mentioned earlier, these are included next to most activities to support you to see what the syllabus looks like in the classroom. This is an example of an activity students complete with the image cards. It is really important to have the students using the words to practice pronunciation and assist with acquisition, as well as require them to use the words in the language structure being taught. In this case, was ist das? Das ist. In this activity, students are using the prompt of the image card to decide what to say. This builds skills towards interacting, where students create language spontaneously based on the context they are in. During the unit, we model many kinds of different activities, but we also model repeating activities with students. This promotes the use of routines in our teaching, providing structure, predictability, and consistency to support student learning. It also takes away the cognitive load required to negotiate doing new kinds of activities all the time, assists with language acquisition and students' confidence in their learning. In the next section of this learning sequence, students are presented with more vocabulary for foods and drinks, and this activity on the screen is repeated. Using games in language teaching is a way to motivate students, a way to provide input as well as extensive practice of language structures. This running reporter game from our unit of work gets students out of their seats and engages reading, writing, listening and speaking skills. Running reporter is a Gianfranco Conti activity. Conti's approach reflects the latest trends in language teaching pedagogy emphasising the importance of comprehensible input, meaningful interaction, and systematic vocabulary and grammar instruction. We've included several of his activities in our unit of work, as well as those of Steve Smith, another leading language teaching expert with a similar approach to Conti. Another teaching tool advocated by Conti, which you'll find in our unit of work, are sentence builders. Sentence builders provide structured practice, they build confidence, promote accuracy and fluency, and support differentiation in instruction, as well as addressing the interacting outcome. This activity addresses the content dot point, use familiar meta-language to compare target language structures and features with English. It does this by encouraging students to think about how sentence builders benefit their learning and when the conversation modelled would take place. Once students have used the sentence builders here to practice the structures, they then complete an information gap activity. Information gap activities are an excellent tool to scaffold towards interacting as students exchange information for a purpose. Students must ask the necessary questions to elicit the information they don't have, and then use the cues to provide the information they do have when asked. In this activity from the unit of work, students are exchanging information about their name, age, what they like to eat and drink, based on the identity they have been given. These activities build toward what students are required to do in the final interacting task, assessment task. In our unit of work, we have modelled the importance of listening in language acquisition. In real life, listening is the skill we generally use the most. As students are beginner language learners in this unit, we focus on the bottom-up approach to listening through activities such as faulty echo and broken sentences. In these activities, students have to decipher the message using all the bits of linguistic code within them. In faulty echo, students are required to listen to the teacher read the sentence, identify any mistake they hear on the second reading, and write it down. In broken sentences, students are relying on the sound of the words they have repeatedly heard to fill in the gaps within the context of the sentence. As well as addressing the understanding outcome, this activity also requires students to create texts. Listen and arrange and spot the wrong sound are further examples of how we focus on the practice of listening, repeating sounds, words, and sentences to foster students' vocabulary retention and the ability to pick out words in a sound stream. Focusing on short lists or sentences rather than whole texts provides students with a sense of mastery as they progress. Another Conti activity that appears in our units of work is disappearing text and sentences. Reading aloud promotes oral fluency, memorisation of content, and an awareness of rhythm, stress, and intonation. It also improves phonological decoding and improves reading competence. In this activity, students play in two teams, Team A and Team B. Each team stands in their own line. The students in Team A all read aloud together the sentence on the first slide. Moving to the next slide, only the first student in the team attempts to say aloud all the sentences, including the missing one. If that student makes an error, they are out, and it is the next student in line's turn. The game continues in this way. And as well as the student being out if they make an error, at the start of each new slide, the turn goes to the next student. The process is then repeated with Team B, and the winner is the team which takes the least number of students to complete all the slides. Included in this activity is the same game with disappearing text, rather than sentences, which is more challenging. This adds a gamification aspect to an activity, which increases student enjoyment and motivation. So this is with the disappearing text. can see it's more challenging and fun in a game context. Intercultural capability is the capacity to exchange, understand, and create meaning between people and across languages and culture. In the Modern Languages K-10 syllabus, students develop intercultural capability across all three focus areas: interacting, understanding texts, and creating texts. Our unit models this approach by embedding activities which develop this capability. Language and culture are intertwined. Students learn not only the grammar and vocabulary, but also how to communicate in the cultural context of the language. In this activity, students watch a video about German mealtimes and answer questions in English about it to deepen their understanding of German culture. Then, they imagine they are a German person and create sentences about what they would eat and drink in German. Although not indicated, this activity also addresses the creating text dot point. Use relevant and familiar vocabulary from a range of themes to create texts. This reflects the fact that in our units of work, we don't necessarily indicate all the content dot points which an activity may address. This activity, Wer ist das?, involves a guessing game and addresses all three outcomes. Students are provided with clues about a well-known person and try and guess who they are by answering Wer ist das? If a student guesses within 3 attempts, they get a point. Otherwise, the teacher gets the point. The winner is the one with the most points at the end. Students then use this game as a model to create their own sentences based on a well-known person of their choosing and play with a partner. This activity builds the skills required to complete the final summative interacting task, where students must provide details about food, likes, and dislikes. This activity shows how prior knowledge is relevant to content covered in this unit in providing a description of a person, connecting it to real-world purposes of communication. It is important that even from early stage 4, we are teaching students skills that will allow them to easily transition to stage 6. A skill students require in stage 6 languages is summarising. Summarising is different to translating text directly and needs to be explicitly taught, which is done through this activity. Students are provided with an email from a German host sister to an Australian student who will be going to stay with them. The teacher guides the students through strategies that can assist them to understand the text. The students then answer some questions in English about the text to demonstrate they've understood it. Then, the teacher provides the students with the summarising strategies. They summarise the first email together and then summarise the second email independently. Following on from this, students choose which of the families they think would be a good match for them and say why. This activity addresses the understanding text outcomes in a variety of ways, as reflected in the content dot points here. This activity showcases our structured and sequenced approach to explicitly teaching new content and skills. Introducing new information is most effective when teachers break it down and teach it explicitly using explanation, demonstration, and modelling, especially when students are new to that learning area. Feedback is an essential part of learning. Teacher feedback, of course, is vital in students understanding their mistakes and seeing how they can improve. However, teaching students strategies to give feedback to each other is also very valuable to their learning. In this activity, students create a role play with suggestions on how to enhance their text. They then provide feedback on another pair's role play, choosing between 3 explicit strategies to do so, provided by their teacher. Feedback frame, feedback sandwich, tell, ask, give. This activity addresses both creating text and understanding text outcomes. The final activity I'll show you is an interacting activity that is the last activity of the unit. This Pizza Spiel board game addresses socialising with peers and is a really fun way for students to finish their unit using the skills they've gained. The aim of the Pizza Spiel board game is to collect all 6 toppings for your pizza before your opponent. Each student has a different pizza to build, collecting the correct ingredients. The winner is the students who collect all their ingredients first. When socialising with peers, students are required to use the target language to interact, but this activity demonstrates that it can be done using simple language and still address the outcome. So, before we conclude our presentation today, we'd like to point out a couple of avenues of our support for the syllabus. If you've not already completed it, the microlearning our team created on MyPL is an excellent introduction to the syllabus. Also, the 2024 Term 2 School Development Day will have a focus on the implementation on new curriculum across all KLAs. The Languages and Culture team has developed a 90-minute support package for the day. The support will focus on the Modern Languages K-10 syllabus, including a reflection on how you're feeling after using the syllabus in Term 1, a presentation on interacting in action, and a Q&A session. And finally, please feel free to contact us or any of the Languages and Culture team if you have any questions or you need advice or support. We are always happy to assist. Our contact details can be found on our website or through the QR code on the screen. Thank you so much for your participation in this session. We really hope you've enjoyed our German launch. Does anybody, I might stop the recording there, Chanel.
Yes, please.